Hello and welcome to Monster Monday. Today's episode, we're continuing spooky October time with the Flameskull. Okay, if you guys have ever played through the horrible, nightmarish world of Barovia, you might know the Flameskull. But if you haven't played through that published work, let me give you some insights into the Flameskull. So, blazing green flames and mad echoing laughter follow a disembodied skull as it patrols its demands. When the undead Flameskull discovers trespassers, it blasts the intruders with fiery rays from its eyes and dreadful spells called up from the dark recesses of its memory. Dark spellcasters fashion Flameskulls from the remains of dead wizards. When the ritual is complete, green flames erupt from the skull to complete its ghastly transformation. A Flameskull only dimly recalls its former life. Though it might speak in its old voice and recount key events from its past, it is but an echo of its former self. However, its undead transformation grants it full access to the magic it wielded in life, letting it cast spells while ignoring the material and somatic components it can no longer employ. Intelligent and vigilant, a Flameskull serves its creator by protecting a hidden treasure hoard, a secret chamber, or a specific individual. A Flameskull carries out the directives given to it when it was created, and it interprets those commands to the letter. A Flameskull's master must craft its instructions with care to ensure that the creature carries out its tasks properly. The fire wreathing of Flameskull burns continually, giving off bright light that the creature controls. It uses those flames as a weapon, focusing them to loose them as fiery rays from its eye sockets. A Flameskull's shattered fragments reform unless they are splashed with holy water or subjected to a dispel magic or remove curse spell. If it can no longer fulfill its intended purpose, the reformed Flameskull is beholden to no one and becomes autonomous. And finally, a Flameskull doesn't require air, food, drink, or sleep. So, like many of the undead creatures that I have focused on recently, the Flameskull is one of those things that can be a great challenge or particularly fun to play with. It can be downscaled or it can be upscaled depending on the party's necessary challenge. You could add several Flameskulls or just have one in the encounter. Let's go through the stat block first, and then we'll talk about how you can employ a Flameskull. So the Flameskull is a tiny undead with an armor class of 13, about 40 hit points, and a fly speed of 40. It has damage resistance to lightning, necrotic, and piercing, and it has damage immunities to cold, fire, and poison. It has condition immunities to charmed, frightened, paralyzed, or poisoned. It has dark vision of 60 feet. And it's considered a challenge rating 4. It has the ability for illumination, so the Flameskull sheds either dim light in a 15-foot radius or bright light in a 15-foot radius and dim light for an additional 15 feet. It can switch between the options as an action. It has magic resistance. The Flameskull has advantage on saving throws against spells and other magical effects. It has rejuvenation. If the Flameskull is destroyed, it regains all of its hit points in 1 hour unless holy water is sprinkled on it or a dispel magic or remove curse spell is cast on them. And then it has spellcasting. The Flameskull is a 5th level spellcaster. Its spellcasting ability is intelligence, spell save DC 13, plus 5 to hit with spell attacks. It requires no somatic or material components to cast its spells. The Flameskull has the following wizard spells prepared. It has Mage Hand at will. It has 3 slots for first level with Magic Missile and Shield. It has 2 slots of second level with Blur and Flaming Sphere. And then it has 1/3 level spell slot, Knowing Fireball. The actions. It has the Flameskull uses Fire Ray twice as a multi-attack. It's a ranged spell attack plus 5 to hit, 30-foot range, 1 target, and it's 3d6 fire damage. So that's not including the other spells that it can employ. It can do that fire ray. So when I think of the Flameskull, in the text, you're given some immediate ideas about how to use this encounter. The Flameskull could be a guardian. Okay, so suppose that your group is in a dungeon or a wizard tower or exploring some ruins. They could come across Flameskulls that are guarding something. That something could be treasure. They could be guarding the coffin of the archmage that once dwelt there. They could be guarding some room that isn't particularly magically important, but maybe has some religious importance. Maybe it was like the summoning room, or some ritual room that was used by some cult eons ago. The Flameskulls could also actually be guarding a living person. So maybe someone of importance has been kidnapped, and the Flameskull has been tasked with guarding that room from any intruders. So a lot of different ways just to set up an encounter where you can use this Flameskull. Now, depending on the party's makeup, you could keep the Flameskull stats as it is and upscale it by adding multiple Flameskulls. That would certainly be more challenging. You could modify the Flameskull's hit points and give it maxed out hit points. Maybe something like 50 or 60 hit points instead of an average of 40. You could give it additional spells. You could throw a couple extra slots into the mix, so maybe it can cast Fireball 3 times. You could change the damage on the Fire Ray from 3d6 to 4d6 or 5d6. So there are a lot of different ways that you could upscale a Flameskull. Now on the flip side, if you want to use a Flameskull with a lower level, like tier 1 party, you got to be careful, because like one fireball could wipe out a party, let alone this ray that does 3d6 damage. So maybe you can make a weaker version of the Flameskull with 20 hit points, so it's easier to kill, and maybe you limit it only to the first level spells, and you make the fire ray only do 2d6 damage instead of 3d6 damage. And that way you can still use the Flameskull but have them be minor Flameskulls. But with that philosophy in mind, you have some ideas about how to integrate it into an encounter. You can add in the Flameskull concept for upscaling it and downscaling it. But let's probe deeper, because I think part of what I try to do with Monster Monday is think about story threads too. So here in the Flameskull origin story, it talks about how the Flameskull was made basically from the remains of dead wizards. So what kind of power would you need as a necromancer to take the skulls of dead wizards and reanimate them with their spellcasting ability intact and this connection to the flames? So what I think of is inherent in the name is Flameskull, and all of these fire-based abilities and immunities. So to me, it makes me think that this is not just the work of a necromancer, but it's got to be the work of a necromancer who has somehow tapped into the elemental plane of fire and is using that nexus with the elemental plane of fire to create these Flameskulls. So, is that the necromancer by him or herself who did that? Or was it part of a greater ritual? And the question is, are the participants in the ritual who are creating these Flameskulls, are they amicable, or do they have a relationship built on enmity? In other words, maybe the necromancer and the pyromancer, or whatever wizard you decide to choose who has harnessed this tie-in with the elemental plane of fire, maybe they're not friends working together towards a common goal. Maybe they're actually kind of like enemies, but then you have to think, why are they working together? Maybe there's a third component in this storyline. So maybe there's a component in this storyline of another wizard who's even more powerful than these two, who basically is above them, some kind of like archmage who's neutral, not good or evil. He's kind of neutral, but he has claimed this library of vast knowledge, right? And he has a not an army, but a healthy-sized group of student wizards and servants who serve in his wizard tower, right? And basically, he represents like the hierarchy of the wizards in this region. And the necromancer and the pyromancer don't like it. They feel like they should have that power, right? And so they are willing to do unspeakable, horrible things to even out the odds. And some of those unspeakable, horrible things are murder. They're murdering the wizards who are lower down the ladder serving the archmage. And there have been these mysterious murders, right? And these wizards have just gone missing. And so maybe the archmage requires the assistance of investigators to help find out what's going on. And the investigation leads towards this, thorough trail that kind of goes cold, but ultimately they find out some scrap of knowledge that there's a pair of wizards who are working together against the archmage and his tower. And they've been killing these lesser wizards, harvesting their bodies and of their intellect, and using this otherworldly ritual that combines necromancy and pyromancy to create these Flameskulls. To basically, in other words, steal the archmage's army and employ them as Flameskulls in their own army. That could be an entire adventure right there. The initial setup, the mystery of these missing wizards, and then discovering like their body parts that weren't used in the ritual, they've all been decapitated. Why? Maybe they're also missing their hands because that same necromancer is making crawling claws to assist in his magical endeavors. So, you've got these wizards whose hands have been cut off and their heads have been cut off. And who's doing this? And why? And then you start to slowly unfold the storyline behind it. And you start to find out that there's been this long rivalry between the archmage and two of his former students who he kicked out of his tower. One being the necromancer, who was starting to explore dark magics beyond the scope of what he should be exploring. So the archmage banished him after several strikes against him. And the other being the pyromancer, who inadvertently opened up a dimensional door or a gate to the elemental plane of fire and narrowly escaped after going in. But when he came back with this item of power, maybe a rod or an amulet, somehow some kind of magical item that allows him to tap into the energy of the elemental plane of fire and infuse it into the creation of these necromantic creatures, the Flameskulls. That could be an adventure, an entire adventure. Hell, it could be a whole chunk of adventures and even the embodiment of a campaign. What starts off as low to mid-level as a murder mystery, and then they find out there's some cult who's been, grabbing wizard bodies and disfiguring them, cutting hands and heads off and stuff like that. And then that ultimately leads to more discoveries of what's going on, and then ultimately leads to the discovery that the necromancer and pyromancer are behind it all, and that they've started creating this army of Flameskulls and undead, and then you maybe find out that they've teamed up with this evil priest who's, animating skeletons and zombies and enslaving ghosts to do their bidding, and their ultimate goal is to take down the archmage and his tower, which represents, social order in the region. So a lot of opportunity there. from a simple creature that flies around and spits fire. But I definitely see this as another great flexible encounter creature. Certainly something that could be expanded into the form of adventures and even campaign worthy. And as long as they could continue to make Flameskulls, you can employ them at all scales of that. You can power them down a little bit and throw them at a lower level party. You can increase their numbers, you can increase their stats, increase their spells, increase their AC or hit points, and upscale them to make them more challenging. But they're a great opportunity to throw a curveball at your party. So look out, players, because you never know when a Flameskull is going to be able to do 4 fireballs instead of 1. So until next time, I hope this Monster Monday has been beneficial. I'd like to thank all of my patrons on Patreon. And of course, if you'd like to get in on my exclusive Patreon content, you can do that for as little as $1 a month. So think about it. In the meantime, enjoy. Thank you for subscribing, liking, and spreading the word, and we'll see you next time.